She has been captivating audiences for years with her wit and charm, straight from the networking floor to give you all the dirt. It's Dusta! Hi, y'all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt, the show where we dive deep into the journey of entrepreneurship with the people who took the plunge and the ups and downs that come with it. I'm your host, Dusta.
Welcome back to another awesome episode of Down Home Dirt. I'm your host, Dusta, and today we're joined with Jessica Gardner with Essentially Blessed Jessica Education. Thank you for coming out today.
Thank you. It's been great to meet with you.
Awesome. So I believe that we met through your mother, who I'm hoping to get on the podcast soon. So small world. That's what I love about being a small business owner is all of the connections that you make. So shout out to Christine Thomas. All right, so we're going to jump into this. Tell me about where you grew up and how long have you lived in the Triangle?
So I've lived in the Triangle pretty much all my life. I was originally homeschooled, so that's how I pretty much started my school life is through homeschooling with my mom.
She is an inspiration, I got to tell you, because I was doing homeschool with my three of them, and it just became a bit overwhelming. And I was like, "How did you do it?" And she was like, "I don't know, we just did it." So
Yeah, we had some interesting times, and then we had some great times. We did everything together.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, "This ain't for me." She has way more patience than I do. All right. So tell us about your business. Like, what do you do, and what does your ideal client look like?
My ideal client is a parent of a special needs child or parents who are within the education system that is failing them. I am there to help bridge the gap for the achievement gap to get them to where they need to be with my resources. And as you know, education in this world today is still not perfect by any means. I'm still actually working in a school system, and there's still a lot that needs to be even changed there. So it's more for parents to be able to work with their child at home and hopefully help bridge that gap because I know the learning disabilities and special needs students don't always get the time that they need in schools, and this just helps bridge the gap.
No, that's great. I agree. I like I was telling you before we started recording, my son has autism, and his autism was so I don't I'm not going to treat it lightly, but it wasn't considered so severe that he got the attention. He slipped through the cracks. So if we would have had those supports and things like that, I think he would have done a lot better. He is currently living on his own. He has a full-time job and he graduated high school, but it wasn't without a lot of struggle. So we appreciate services like that.
Yeah, and I also think there also needs to be more transparency for parents, which a lot of schools right now don't really do, is having transparency between IEPs and 504s of what all it entails because as an educator, legally, whatever school we're at, we're only legally allowed to tell whatever the principal tells us because she runs the school. So, like, there needs to be more transparency between the IEPs and 504s. I was supposed to get an IEP in a public school 20-something years ago, or 18 years ago, and the school system wouldn't do it, even though I had one of the 13 categories that listed, which should have categorized me to have an IEP because my mom had it documented with 50 documents to prove it.
That yes, I 100% understand that. My son went to school whenever he was 6 because of the way his birthday, or I'm sorry, 5, and he wasn't really ready. And they put him in a regular kindergarten class, and they didn't really want to give him an IEP. They didn't want to do anything until they could see him fail, and then they wanted to do intervention services. But I preface all this because he has been going to speech therapy, occupational therapy, all of that since he was 18 months old. So I knew that there was something going on. And it just was like a fight.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's so much. I could talk on it all day long. because even I feel like parents, yes, we even the educators, we have a lot on our lives that we have to like put aside when we walk through the door, no matter how crazy it is. And yes, for special education teachers, we do get the brunt of a lot of things. Because we're usually, for my last school, I was the first one to go because of a special education matter that happened, and it was not my say so. It was just easier for me to leave than stay. And there just needs to be more IEP transparency, and I wish every state would do it to make it where there's classes for parents, whether it's online or in person at the school. You at least learn what your student may need or may not need, but either way, you at least have an idea instead of being lost through the world trying to figure it out. Because a lot of our things is you have to have a lot of data before we can even give you the services. Data and testing matter a lot in education because that's the only way to prove what your child actually knows. And some schools really do want to test. Some schools are like, nope, we're not paying for that test. We're not going to do any tests. So that's the fallback of difference between schools that I've seen personally and just through stories. And if you could find a way to get the data faster, that's like the easiest way to, even private testing. I know it's expensive, but if you really want to get your child to where they have one of the 13 different categories that list you as an IEP, then that's the best way to go, sadly, right now.
No, and I completely understand that. We were in Florida when all of this happened with my son, so obviously things are a lot different there than they are here. And then when we moved here, we started learning about how much more difficult things were here. While they do not have services, they did not, excuse me, have services when my son was there, as many as they have now. They had more services here, which is the reason I moved here. But getting those became more difficult, and I was like, okay, I give up, honestly. And something else
Yeah,
I learned about too is like when you have an IEP, you need to get like an IEP advocate too, like somebody who's going to be there who knows more about it than you do.
yes, that is my goal once I get my bachelor's degree, which I'm working on, but I also still need the classroom experience for student teaching. People think I'm crazy for going back into the school system the way the world is and the way they say the kids are. But to be honest, it's not really the kids. It's more of administration and politics. It depends on who your administrators is, and it depends on what administration policies passes with our government
That's true.
to be the most trained parent. So like it's not it's not a lot of our say so, whereas educators used to have a lot more say so than they in the past, whereas now we have slim to none.
Right. And we need people like you who are out there advocating and making sure that these needs are being met. That's very important.
Hmm.
So I appreciate you. Even though my children are grown, I really appreciate it. There's somebody there now for the people coming in, you know? So that's great.
Yeah, my goal is definitely to become an IEP advocate once I get my degree. I'm still working on it, but it will get there eventually. So,
Hey, no, you're working on it. Congratulations. That's amazing. I love that. So tell us about what your ready moment was that made you jump into entrepreneurship.
I would say I've probably been in entrepreneurship in and out of for the last 4 years. I would say. I did different MLMs and like I sold things. It was fun. I made extra side money. That's all I really cared about for then. And so like it didn't really hit me to like start full-fledged into business until this last year when I resigned from my paraprofessional job that I had due to an issue that could not be resolved. And during the weeks that I had completely nothing to do except chores, take care of the dogs, and just do life stuff, I was like, I just started researching on YouTube and just random things I could do to like make money so that we wouldn't be as far behind, being that I didn't have a job. I found that you could self-publish books pretty darn easily now. And I was like, I can do that. And so I researched it for a while, and then I was like, ooh, I can do this and this and this. And because I had already worked with students, I already knew what those students needed. I still knew teachers who wanted my digital resources and the resources that I created for that school specifically. Um, I ended up making more extra digital resources and selling those, and then I ended up creating my 2 books that I have now self-published, and I will be publishing my 3rd hopefully in the next couple weeks.
That's amazing. Tell us about the books.
So the first one that I published is the alphabet book, and that's basically to help with reading comprehension and learning the alphabet, because especially some students have a difficulty learning the alphabet just in general and just building up the repetition of it. And this basically gives them visuals to go off of to help them independently know the alphabet. The more you repeat it, the more it will get in their head and they can do it. The other one that I have released is learning how to control your emotions. Now, learning how to control your emotions is great because I base it off of school, but you can also apply it to home as well. It has very big visuals, and you could say those visuals are so big for that book. However, our students, especially the students I work, and me, are very love visuals. So I wanted them to have it clear, concise, where you can point at it and use in any kind of circumstance, or you can just read it for bedtime. So that's a great thing about it being a book and like a visual aid helper as well.
No, that's great. I love that because that is something that I feel like I'm much older than you, I'm sure, but my generation did not know how to deal with our emotions because our parents didn't. And so I'm finding myself struggling trying to teach my children how to manage their emotions. We bought a lot of books, so I really appreciate you for putting one out there. Where can everyone find your book?
You can find my books on Amazon.
I love that Amazon is doing that for people. They're fabulous. I've always wanted to write a book, but just for funsies. So I might do that sometime myself. After the podcast and the rap career take off, totally doing it.
Yep, we can actually, I think it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Yeah,
Even
I
better.
think,
I will link that
yeah.
when the episode drops so that everybody can find her books. So tell us about your support system. Like, who's your biggest supporter, and how has having that support helped you practice success?
I would say probably my biggest supporter are my parents and my husband. Um, each of them have dealt with their both sides of my craziness, of my parents with dealing with the education system and actually getting me the help I needed to be successful in life. And because I've had so many deep conversations with just random with coworkers, and they're like, "Well, you were homeschooled. Why are you this social?" Because there is a stigmatism around homeschooling that you're not social. There is a whole entire beef around that. That's a whole nother story that I could tell you. And unfortunately, the way my parents raised us is that I still had social situation. I was still social. I still went to public school events, even though I was homeschooled. I still had plenty of friends. It's not about that. It was more my mom and dad's getting me the help I needed, and I was able to do better with one-on-one and have less chaos around me instead of being possibly, if I would have gotten an IEP in the system, I would have probably most likely been in the special education or research room for multiple hours in the school to get the help I needed. But however, I never got that. So my mom took over and got that. And she really helped me become successful. And I'm now lucky enough to help her with her business because now we can connect and do different things
which is
all the time
great.
now.
That's fabulous.
Hmm.
I love hearing that story because I always try to ask people, like, who's your biggest inspiration? And some people kind of stutter on that. And I'm like, so I took that question out, but I do want to ask you because I feel like this is a good question for you. Who is your biggest inspiration for being an entrepreneur?
I would probably say my mom because it's been seeing her work so hard over the last, since she started her business around COVID time, um, to where it is now. It's just crazy because now we'll go out and she'll get some message from some client or whatever saying, "Oh, I love this," or "I love this," and "Can you do this?" And she's like, she makes it very easy and effective. And I will tell you, my business is not like that right now. I'm still implementing some of the stuff that she did, but I'm also working 60 hours a week, so it's kind of difficult. but I,
I'm glad
but
you
I do
mentioned
love it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because being an entrepreneur is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5, and a lot
Oh,
of people need to understand that while we have more control over our schedule, we don't always have control over how we spend our time making sure our business works for us. So
yeah,
that seems to be a
I
hard
yeah,
one to get a grip on.
I do full-time school and full-time work in addition to what I do self-publishing. So
Oh my
it's
gosh.
pretty much work 24/7 for me.
I hear it and I see, a reflection of myself in you because I'm like, oh, and then when people are like, I'm exhausted just listening to you, I see it now. I'm like, oh, I didn't think this was exhausting because this is just my life, always
Hmm.
working. So that's okay. See, in these podcasts, sometimes I have moments of self reflection and I'm like, is that okay? That's noted. Making notes. So, how do you measure success in your business?
I would say I measure success by how many people get my books because like it's not about the money for me, obviously, because authors don't make that much. Let's just be transparent about that. And it's more of like if if one of whoever buys my books and give it to their kid and their kid learns the self-regulation, that's a huge weight off their shoulders and whoever does their services, because once they know how to regulate themselves in school, they are so much better off. They can flip and switch like from mad to sad to calm so fast it's not even funny because I've seen it happen. And once they learn that self-regulation, they're so much better and they can actually learn more and learn in an engaging environment because they know how to control themselves.
That's great. I'm trying to order it, but right now, but we're talking. So I'll finish this podcast and then I'm ordering it because my daughter has ADHD and I feel like if we had some type of a resource to learn how to regulate emotions, because that's one of the biggest things, we're always dysregulated. I think that would help her out. So I'm really glad you came on today. So where do you see yourself in the future with your business?
I would love to be a IEP advocate and help people specifically in North Carolina, all around North Carolina, to get their students the services they need and make sure they stay equipped to it, whether that's me showing up to school and surprising the school. I would do that in a heartbeat. Like, I'm not afraid to be that person, and which in a way sounds bad as an educator. However,
But not as an
this is the
advocate.
bad part of it. Yeah, not as an advocate, but special education teachers also, depending on how you teach as a special education teacher, there is a very big uh, stigmatism around that also because you can if you're with a school you can only do so much,
Hmm.
whereas with your when you're not, you can be more of the bearer of bad news and say you got to follow along
That's true. The whole
to
conformity thing.
mhm.
Circling back around to where you had mentioned about being a homeschool kid, you're supposed to be awkward. I completely understand that. But I personally have had both experiences, both public school and homeschool my children. And I've noticed that homeschool children actually work a lot better with children of all ages versus only children their own age. And I feel like separating them by grade kind of hinders their ability to communicate with all people.
So that kind of depends on the like education model for the school. Like I'm at a new school where we bring all of our childrens together on multiple occasions, so our students can like a kindergarten can meet an eighth grader and build a relationship through there. Uh, However, that is not all schools in pretty much North Carolina. There's very few that actually have that education model. Mine is still a pilot school for this, so it's still not set in stone. It's still not all schools have to do it this way yet. So it is a very rare chance that I actually get to see how this education model is. However, with being homeschooled, I do see the I have I still keep up with 40 of my homeschool friends, and we all have successful jobs, and we still collaborate and do things. When we were growing up all together, we did field trips, you name it, we did everything together. And the way with homeschooling great is you don't you depending on which co-ops you do, you can do baby, you can go into any kind of range on any of the field trips or any kind of educational thing, which is very nice. And schools, I definitely do believe need to make more an effort to like create those bigger connections. The reason why they do separate it by grade is due to the data. It's the easiest way for them to receive data for state assessments. That is the reasoning behind it. Um, However, some schools will choose to not have students be together because of some schools are overflowing to the amount of students that they can't rotate or move their students except for recess and lunch. And that's it.
No, I get that. We went from homeschooling to private school because I wanted to skip over the idea of public school. It did not serve my children that well, so this is just a personal thing and not advocating anybody. I'm just saying we did that. And the private school that she currently goes to, they actually so it's K through 8th grade. They get to mingle with each other in aftercare. They get to kind of see each other throughout the day. And I feel like that's really good for fostering those relationships and making sure that we're not just,
Mhm.
being able to connect with our own grade level.
That's still a very rare education model because most schools right now, I think there are very few that, specifically in North Carolina, that actually have that same education model.
Yeah, that's what I'm noticing. Like I said, I'm from Florida, so it's obviously different down there. And I chose private school to go from homeschool to private school. And it's been a really good transition for her because she also has, like I said, ADHD. And so I feel like they address her needs a lot more because if she is not doing so good in like math, for example, they'll put her with kids who are also not doing so great and they'll all learn together and get better at it instead of like
Mhm.
withholding everybody because one person doesn't know it. Because that's what I experienced in public school and it was just frustrating. And of course, ADHD unmedicated, I was like, I'm bored. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to talk. I'm going to whatever. Right. And
Yeah.
in this private school environment, like she doesn't have that because she's not an option. It's, hey, you didn't learn this. Cool. We're all going to work together while these other kids move on. Like it's wonderful. Sorry. That's just my little rant about school.
Hey, you're good.
Thanks. Well, so moving on, what is your main marketing strategy right now to get the word out about what you're doing?
I would say my main marketing strategy is I'm using my Facebook and Instagram and posting consistently on it, which is an achievement in itself.
Consistency is key. I get it.
That has really helped. I will hopefully in the next couple months. I have a few local stores that have already contacted me about getting my books in their stores. I just have to go there, so I'm trying to schedule that. So we will see
No,
where that goes.
absolutely. And there are some Facebook groups that I'll tell you about off recording that you should join that I'm part of because of everything I've dealt with my kids. That would be a great place for you to connect with other parents. So,
Most definitely.
but when we're done recording, definitely get up with you on that. All right. My next question is, what advice was most impactful to help you make the leap into entrepreneurship?
That's a good question. Wasn't expecting that one. I would say, like, I've done 4 other podcasts right now, so it's like, who knows? They're all different.
Hey, exactly.
Yep. Um, I really like some of the Brené Brown quotes that she has, and there's one quote, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's like, entrepreneurship isn't like a walk in the park, and we're like, that fits it so well.
100%. It is very much up and down, and it's the type of stress that some people absolutely could just never handle. And I love that you're sharing your story with us because I'm also one of those people where like I could make $300 this week or I could make 3,000, but like next week I could make 0. And I have to be able
Mhm.
to handle that and figure out my next move and adjust accordingly.
Mhm.
So it's definitely it is it's a roller coaster for sure. Sorry, I just get really like flustered when I have to think about all the things that I have to think about. So, what advice would you give?
If it wasn't for my whiteboard.
Yeah, what advice would
If
you
it
give
wasn't for
someone
this
who's wanting?
whiteboard. Okay.
All right, refocus. What advice would you give someone who's wanting to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
To just go for it and don't care about anybody's doubts or judgments on it. Because when I first started, at least the education side of my entrepreneurship, I got a lot of heat from other people saying, "Why are you doing this when you already know the education system is already so messed up?" And I was like, "Well, there's gonna be somebody's got to make sure all these kids get their services they need. If you're just gonna bounce as an educator, then you didn't like it from the first place." Because right now, a lot of teachers there's some teachers that are only going in it for the days off that we have,
Wow.
or the schedule that we have nowadays. So, like, whether that's a general education or a special educator, it kind of just, there are some teachers like that who are only there because they're like, yeah, we get 3 months off in the summer. Yeah, that's great. However, we don't get paid during that time.
No, I've met some teachers, including at so my kid goes to a year-round school now, so they only have 5 weeks off.
Hmm.
But in the past, these teachers are like working for Pizza Hut or whatever, like doing summer jobs that barista, whatever, just to make the ends meet, and that kind of sucks.
Yep, teachers do not get any of the credit that they do.
No,
And I would love to change that.
and I love to see your passion about it because it feels like this is something that's obviously real near and dear to you, but you also care so much about the whole idea of education being changed, and that's what's important.
Hmm. Like, there's not a person in any political right now. They could say that they do to get the check or mark for us to vote for them. However, none of our people in our political parties, either way, they will say they help the education system, but there's no action actually proving that they help the education system in any way, shape, or form. And none of these politicians don't even have education degrees or know what it actually takes to be in a classroom. So how can you change that if you don't know?
No, I agree 100% because when I was trying to do homeschool, we were working with a program because that is not my forte. And I pick up things really quickly, but my brain doesn't process like everyone else's. So knowing how to do all of those things is very important. I agree with you on that. and how to get the information there and how to get them help and how to look for signs when they need help and everything. There's just so much I didn't think about. Sorry, I have a little panic moment there.
You're good.
You're right. But I did what I thought was appropriate, and I got her into an education establishment. So, because I was in over my head, I'm going to be honest. We were in second grade, and I was like, this is not, no. But, shout out to all the homeschool parents out there who understand it and get it. You guys are amazing. Keep doing a great job. Keep up with the co-ops. Like, I wanted to do the fun stuff with education, like outschooling, or is that what it's called? Or unschooling. That's what it is. I was like, let's go to farms. Let's go to this. And I'm like, not really teaching her what she needs to know. So she did fall behind a little bit in math, and that's my fault because I'm not good at math. So I feel like you have to have a certain credential to be able to do this for sure. And not just because you want to. So are there any resources out there too, besides, your book and everything that you've learned about for, helping these students with disabilities?
So if you are in North Carolina, the biggest resource you can use is the Department of Education for North Carolina, because it gives you what their state standards are and if your child's in first grade, here are the first grade standards of what we want them to achieve. That gives you at least an idea of what they're going to work on through this whole entire school year. And that's definitely a great resources. I would also recommend some resources from uncommonschools.com. They have some great additional resources to help children with diverse learners, students, because this is basically, the Uncommon Schools is what my school is based off of, and we use everything from Uncommon Schools at our school. And just in the last 2 weeks, I've learned a lot about Uncommon Schools, and they help us differentiate content and the environment so that all of our students can learn correctly. So this can give you more idea of like what the classroom should look like, what would be the best way for your student to learn in a classroom.
That's actually, I'm glad that you brought that up. Is a great point. Is your environment that you're learning in has a huge impact on a lot of things. And that's why I started my cleaning company, because I actually started it right in 2020, like literally a month before the shutdown. And I was like, cool, what am I going to do now? Right. And then I started realizing that, we're in our homes for everything: work, school, play, sleep, eat, everything. So people were not doing well with being able to homeschool their children and work and clean the house. So that's where I came in, and I was like, cool, we're going to go ahead and get this environment cleaned up to where you can feel unfrazzled and learn better. And that's when I started realizing that even my own environment needs to be that way, because I'm chaotic and I have everything everywhere all the time. Otherwise I can't find it. So that's my little thing. I love that you mentioned that environment. So before we end the podcast, do you want to share any advice or any insights with our listeners about you and your company?
You can go check out on Facebook for my Facebook page. It's Essentially Blessed Jessica Education. That's where I have updated on. That's the most up-to-date for books and what's coming and how to purchase digital resources and everything.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to share that when your episode drops so people can connect with you. But I want to thank you very much for coming out today and doing a session with us. And I look forward to everything you're doing. I'm really excited. I'm following online so I can get all the updates. But I just want to say thank you, and join us again next week for another amazing episode of Down Home Dirt.
This episode is sponsored by the Home Inspector team. It seems like everywhere you look nowadays, you see new homes popping up all over the place like dandelions in the spring. You have to wonder how well those homes are being built with how fast they're building them. That's where the home inspector team comes in. With their new construction bundle, you can have every phase of your new construction home professionally inspected to make sure no mistakes are being made. First, they come out before the drywall is installed to make sure the construction and utility rough-ins are done properly, because once they are out of sight, they are out of mind. Before you move in, they ensure everything is functioning properly and provide essential information to help you maintain the home, safeguarding your family and your investment. And finally, just before the builder's warranty expires, they come in to make sure that everything is A-OK, and if it's not, they make sharing your inspection report with the builder a breeze. Scheduling an appointment with the home inspector team is super easy. I just did it myself. Just visit their website, thehomeinspector.team, to get an instant quote and to schedule the inspection at a time that works best for you. And don't forget to mention our podcast to receive a special discount. Now back to the show.